Okay, let me, oh, it's working now. Okay, so so the declaration of array is pretty simple. So the first part is the data type, you know. What is the type for each array element? So in this particular case, my array is the name of the array. It's identified. And my array is an array of type int, which is integer type. You know, is an integer type array or array of integer type. So so then so my array equals new, and then again the array type, and this is basically defines the number of elements. So how many elements this particular array contains. So in this case, this is an array of 20 elements of integer type. Okay. Now this basically declare an array called my array. And then for the array, you can assign a value to each of the array element. So because of the array use the index, so we can use the loop. Basically, we can loop on the index to assign the element to each array element. Okay, so so in this particular example, once we define the array of my array, then we can use the loop. We know that if we know exactly how many loop we're going to do, for loop is the best option. So you can say for I declare I equals 0, and then check the condition. When I is still less than 20, then we can actually execute the body of the for loop. And then this is actually the increment of the array index. So we basically use the for loop to increment the index. So the index starts from 0 and all the way to 19. Because when index reaches 20, then it's out of the range. So my array 0 equals 2 times 0. So my array 1 equals 2 times 1. My array 2 equals 2 times 2. So this is basically going to actually, assign values to the array element. So the loop is going to be actually loop from 0 to 19, which is total 20. So this way, we're going to assign the array, each of the array element. My array 0 equals 0. My array 1 equals 2, right? Because it's 2 times the index. So you can keep going. So the last one is my array 19, which is 2 times 19. What is that? It's 38. Okay. Now keep that in mind. So once we declare the array of 20 elements, the index actually starts from 0. So the index of last array is 19, which is 20 minus 1. So we have to remember this. The typical problem with most people is they try to actually manipulate the array element, and they normally excuse me. They normally declare array of, for example, 100 elements. And then So they're going to assign the last array element with a value. And then sometimes people just forget that the array starts from 0. So they believe the index of last element is 100, which is not. The index of last element should be 99. Okay. So we'll be back and work on these set of the problem, including the challenge activity 5.2.3. But before we do this, I try to cover up all the materials we want to cover for today. So I don't know what's going on. Okay, so so let me actually finish most of the syntax, the topics. Then we will come back and work on the example. Now, some of the activities in the Java program is to swap two variables. Suppose I have a variable x and a variable y. So I can declare, say, int x, say x equals whatever the value. So let's say x equals 10. And then I can declare another value, y, and I initialize the value of y equals to 20. Now, in some case, we want to write a program to swap the values of these two variables. So hopefully, after couple of actually statement, we eventually will, when we try to print this x plus space y, we hope that when we try to print x and y, and we will print out something like 20 and 10. So hopefully, initially the value of x is 10, y is 20, and then after some of the some of the work, then we actually swapped the values. So now, hopefully, if x becomes 20 and y becomes 10, so we just exchange the value. How are we going to do this? So now, in the past, I see some people just say, okay, that's easy. So let's say, assign the value of y to x. And then, so, the value of y actually assigned to x. So the x contains the value of y. And then we can say, assign the value of x to y. So we exchange the values. Do you think this is going to do the job? What happens if we assign y to x? So the value of x is, what is the value of x? $20, right? So the value of x is 20. Now, and the next one we can say, okay, the value of y assigned to x and the value of x assigned to y. So we swap the, the two variables. Now, what happens if we execute the y equals x? So what's the value of y now? Okay, I see the Yeah, it is 20. So y it's 10. So x, initially, the value of x is 10. But after actually we execute x equals y, so the value of y is assigned to x. So 20 going to be assigned to x. So x is 20, right? So now if we actually do this, then assign x back to y. Now what's the value of y? Also 20, right? Because x is, we assign the value of y to x, so x becomes 20. Now we assign x back to y because x is 20. So it doesn't change the value of y. Y is also 20 because x is 20 now. So this is not the way to swap the values, to exchange the value. Now, what's the best way to do this? This is how. So suppose we have value x, declare the value of x, and the value of x is 10. And y is 20. This is actually what stored in the computer memory. So we declare x as integer and assign the value 10 to x, and declare y as integer and assign 20 to y. Now, if we want to swap the value, so make sure that after the operation, certain operations, now x becomes 20 and y becomes 10. Now, so if you actually do this, assign y to x, so x becomes 20, and assign x back to y, and now both value becomes 20. That's not what we want. So in order to actually do the swap, we need to declare a temporary variable. I call the temp var. So we need to declare a temporary variable. So the first thing we need to do is assign x to temp val. Okay. So what does that mean? This is going to set the value of temp val to okay. I think I'm okay. So thank you. So assign temp. So once we actually execute this, temp val equals x. Now what's the value of temp val? Yes, it is x, but what is the value? It's the same value as 10, right? So this basically, so temp val equals x, so we assign the value of x to here, to copy the value of 10 to temp val. And then we just assign, the value of y to x, so x equals y, so that's assignment. So that means x equals y, gonna override the value of y, value of x to 20. This is gonna override the value to 20. And then the next step is y equals temp val. So then we're gonna assign the temporary value to x. So this way, we're gonna actually assign 10 to y. So we use the temporary value and store the value of x to temporary position, and then override the value of x with y. And then we put the temporary value back to x. So you need actually some kind of a buffer to store the temporary value. So before we change the value of x to y, then we save the value of x. Because once actually value of y assigned to x, then we need to use the, assign this value to y. So this way we actually swap the value. So just keep that in mind. So in in computer, in computer language, when you actually try to swap two variables, you have to use the temporary variables. So that's basically what we're supposed to do. Okay. The next topic we're going to cover is the multi-dimensional arrays. So in this particular example, we actually try to define a two-dimensional array. Remember, one-dimensional array we use for array of integer, we can use int, square bracket, and the variable name. So we can say x. So x is an array now. A new int 20. Okay. Now for two-dimensional, so we're going to use very similar syntax. So for two-dimensional, instead of one square bracket, we use two pairs of square bracket for two. And my array, that's the array, that's the identifier, the array name. Then we put the new, that's a syntax, and an int, and then we put a 2 and a 3. So 2 and a 3, these are two actually, index values, okay? Because we use a two-dimensional array. So the typical way to represent two-dimensional array is that we use the, the Cartesian, this x axis and the y axis, right? So we can say x is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and for y in the vertical, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we can represent any, to actually locate any point in two-dimensional array. Then you can use the, the index for both x and y. So for example, and if you choose x equals 3, y equals 2, then that's the point which says x equals 3, y equals 2. So we locate a particular point using two indexes, the x value and the y value. Okay. Now this two-dimensional is basically used to, locate a particular value using two index. Okay. So this is actually the first index. This is the second index. Okay. So the first index, the maximum number for first index is 2. The maximum number for the second index is 3. So what's the total number of arrays? Total actually number of elements in this array. So we have x, okay. So we have if we interpret this first one as x, the second one as y, okay, I'm just guessing. So x actually, the maximum value for x is 2. So that means x has 2 elements. So the first one is 0 and a 1, right? And the y has 3 elements. So y actually from 0, 1, and a 2, right? So based on the combination of these first index and the second index, how many total elements for this two-dimensional array? Let's count. Suppose the first index is 0, and then the second index is also 0, right? That's 1 element. And the first index is 0, second index is 1. That's another element. First index 0, second index is 2. That's another one. First index 0, second index is 3. Is this valid index? Come on. What's wrong with this? The second index, the maximum, there are total actually 3 elements, you know, total of 3 values for the second index. Now, what is the range for the second index? We always start the index from 0. And what's the largest index for the second index? 2, right? Because there are total 3. So the second index value should be 0, 1, and 2. 3 is not a valid one. So this is not a legitimate one. So if the first index is 0, then we have 0, 1, 2 for the second index. And then we switch to the first index to 1. And then the second index could be 0, could be 1, could be 2, right? So we have total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, total of six elements. Because for the first index, it's the total number of index 2. So you can only pick 0 and 1 and not include the 2. Remember, the largest the index value is 2 minus 1, okay, not 2. So that means with the 2-dimensional array, you know, if you define 2 and 3, 2 for the first index, 3 to the second index, then the total element could be 6. Okay. So we can assign a value to each of the element in 2-dimensional array. So it could be 0, 0, and I can assign 55 to my array 0, 0, and 77 to my array 1, 1. Okay. You can always do this. Now let me actually give you another example. So if I actually declare array as a double 2-dimensional array, okay. Now I'm gonna say your array instead of my array. So I'm gonna say new double. So come on. So this is so I put the index 100 for the first index. The second index is 100. How many elements your array contains? How many elements actually your array contains? Let's see. So let me actually write here. It's much. Okay. What's the total number of elements for your array? So think about this is actually X, that's index Y. So then we have X. X has a 100 values. Y has also 100 values. So you're going to pick 1, 2, 3, 4 all the way. There are total of 100 here and total of 100 here. And in terms of array element, we can pick so double. So you have a double 0, 0. So that's this one, and double 1, 1. That's this one, right? So if I have 1 here, then double 1, 1 is this one. This one, that's 100. Oh, I'm sorry. You're never going to reach 100, so it's 99. So this is actually, this is the value when y equals 0, x equals 99. So this is double 99, 0, right? This is double 99, so that's x, that's y. Yeah, x is 99, y is 0. So y is 0, and this is 99. So how many how many elements total? So we have how many dots inside? It's just like a grid of 100 by 100, right? It's a grid of 100 by 100. So how many total elements? It's a 10,000. It's 100 times 100. Okay. Okay, let's actually talk about another example. Let's say int I call the matrix equals new int 4, 5, semicolon. What's the size of the matrix?
Is it 20?
It's 20, right? So the matrix actually contains 20 elements. So you can interpret this 4 as the row, this is the column. So you can have matrix. So the matrix, you can have, say, there's a matrix. Is something, looks like you have element here. So this one is 0, 0 element. And this one is 0, 1, because that's the raw number 0. And 0, 2, 0, 3, and 0, 4. And this is a 1, 0, 1, 1, 1, 2. And the last one is 4. Oh, I'm sorry, it's 3, 4. Right? So this is 1, this is 2, this is 3. That's raw number 3. And that's column 0, column 1, column 2, column 3, column 4. Okay. So you can interpret a two-dimensional array as a matrix, you know. So this is a number of row and this is number of column. So each, you know, for a particular element here, you just check the row number and the column number. So in this case, it's actually 2, 0, 1, 2. Yeah, 2, 2. This is 2, 2, right? 1, 2. Yeah, this is 2, 2. And what is this? This is 3, 4. Okay. So because it's row 3, column 4. Okay. So this is actually the it's a two-dimensional. Okay. Now, the definition is pretty simple. To understand how we're going to do this, you need to practice a lot. Now, remember that we can initialize the array using two ways. You have two ways to initialize array. First, you can declare an array using this approach. You can declare an array and then assign the array element. Or there's another way. You can declare an array and immediately initialize the value. Okay. Now, for two-dimensional array, the initialization is kind of tricky. Remember that one-dimensional array, you can use like a int for one-dimensional array. If you say my array, and you can actually declare a value, right? So it's a 1, 4, 3, 5, 10. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You have 5 elements. So basically, you declare an array of 5 elements. And the first array element index 0 is 1. So my array 0 is 1. My array 1 is 4. And my array, what's the last one? 4. My array 4 is 10. Okay. So you can actually immediately declare an array and initialize the value for the array. For a small size array, this is a really good way to do this. It's pretty simple. Okay. Now for two-dimensional array, you can actually declare the array non-vals and assign an initial value. Now for two-dimensional array, it's kind of tricky because so you actually use a list. Okay. Use a brace, curly brace. And then the first element of this list is another list, right? So it's like an array inside array. Okay. So what does that mean? So that means the non-vals is a two-dimensional array. Okay. And for the first index 0, so you have, so what is the size of this? What is the size of this non-val? What's the total value of total number of elements in non-val?
6.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Right? Now, how this 6 is actually organized? Okay, so then you can realize that you have 2. Okay, now what is the first? So everything in here is, so then that's the index 0 for the first, and that's the index 1 for the first first value. And then here is the index of the inner array. Okay, so basically this is an array of 2 by 3. So 2 basically represent how many, one-dimensional array do I have? And then the second one basically means how many actual elements in each of the single-dimensional array. So we can actually just say n val 0, 0 is 22, right? Based on this definition, 22 is assigned to n 0, 0. Now, what is n val 0, 1?
44.
44. So this 0 basically represent the first array. Okay. Now this, so if you have n val 1, 2, what is this? So now look at the 1. That means, okay, it's not the first index, first array. So you are looking at the, because first one is index 0. The second one is index 1. So this is the second one. And then that 2 basically means the index of the second array. What is this value?
98.
Remember, that's index 0. That's index 1. That's index 2. So this is kind of a mistake that people always make. So the index actually starts from 0. So index 2 basically means represent 99. Okay. So that's 99. Okay. So now if we actually, so this is one way, but this is actually confusing. So most of the time, when people actually initialize the two-dimensional array, they basically use multiple lines to make a row more visible. So for example, you put the first actually a single dimensional array in the first line, and the second single dimensional array in the second line, and you still put the brace here and the brace here. So you can change the line. So then this will be much clearer. So now this represents row number 0. This represents row number 1. And now this represents the column number 0, right? And the column number 1, column number 2. So it's much clearer. So this means basically this one is 0 or 1, 0. So this is a 1, 0. So one 0 is 97 because the row number is 1 and the column number is 0. The first represent row, the second represent a column. Okay. So the two-dimensional array is a little bit confusing, but it's not that difficult. So if you actually carefully organize the elements, you can still actually clearly see the difference. Okay, now let's go back to the very beginning when we start. So let's actually practice some of the work. Let's check the challenge activity 5.2.3. So we can actually work together to solve the problem. Okay, so the challenge activity 5.2.3. So if you actually go into the Zai book, go to chapter 5 and go to the challenge activity, so you can see the problem. So write a for loop to print all elements in course grades. So it looks like course grades is a variable. It looks like array, following each element with a space, including the last. Print forward and backward. Okay, so end each loop with a new line. That's fine. The example is if the course grade is an array of 4 elements, right? 7, 9, 11, 10. So you want to write the Java program to print the array in this order, 7, 9, 11, 10, and also in reverse order. Okay. So this just realize that we're talking about array. Now this case is a single dimensional array. Okay. So the course grade is contains 4 elements. So the index is going to from 0 to 3, right? So when you actually print the array element and also reversed order, so you basically just manipulate the index, okay, using the loop. So let's take a look at this example, okay? So 5.2.3. Let's see. 5.2.3, the challenging problem. Okay, so this is the one. So write a for loop to print all elements in course grade. Okay, in this order. So the code is actually here. The program is actually here. So we actually have a class called a course grade printer, and we also declare a scanner, a new scanner in, and so this is actually constant num-vals, so number of variables. That's 4. Remember, it's a final, right? So that means it's the num-val is declared as a constant value. So you cannot change the num-val. It's always 4. So you cannot assign num-val equals 5. So this is going to give you syntax error because this assignment is final. Okay. So then you declare an array, which is an int square bracket, and the course array is a new int num-val. So this is actually, it's an array of 4 elements. So course grade is an array of 4 elements. Now, the first actually for loop is basically you're gonna loop from I equals 0, that's the index of the array, to all the way to the length. So what is the course grade dot length? What is course grade dot length? Course grade dot length. What's the value? Remember, if we have array, like my array dot length, what is my array dot length gonna give you? This will give you the size of the array. So this is gonna give you 4, okay? Because course grade is declared as an array of 4 elements. So this is gonna give you 4, okay? You can replace this by num-vals, which is also 4, right? It's the same, okay? And then you're gonna actually read from the scanner, okay? And each time when you read it, you're gonna assign to the course grade. So basically you have 4 values, okay? Okay. Now you're gonna do the loop and assign course grade 0, course grade 1, course grade 2, course grade 3, and with the imported value. And now the next thing you're gonna do is you want to print the array. Okay. And reverse, you print the array in the reverse way. Okay. So what are you gonna do? How can we do this? We're gonna use the for loop. Okay, so you can for each I'm gonna print course grade I, right? For when I equals 0, I'm gonna print the course grade 0. However, because I'm gonna actually print in this particular order, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to, put a space in between, right? Oh, I'm sorry. I need to put the print. I should not to print ln, because print ln basically every time I print, I'm gonna change to next line. But I don't want to change to next line, because every time when I print a cost 0, then I want to print a cost 1 next to it. After just I just want to print a space, right? And then next to it. So now this is how I'm gonna print the array in a normal way from index 0, 1, 2, 3. And now the second one is I'm gonna print the array reversely. So I can actually print the index 3 first, index 2 next. Now what should I do? What should I do? For you're gonna put the I equals you're gonna start from the last index. What's the last index?
It's 10.
It's 10. Why it's 10?
Aren't you printing it in reverse?
Yeah. Yes, I know it's 10, but what's the index of 10? What's the index of this? What
Oh, it's 4.
I'm talking about the index. It's 4. Any other opinion?
The index will be 9 because there are 10 values, and you're counting 0.
No, there's no 10 values. It's actually the value of the element is 10, but the array is only 4. Remember that you declare an array called cost grades. So the cost grade, the first array element is 7, second one is 9, third one is 11, the fourth one is 10. 10 is not the array size. 10 is the array element. It's the last array element. So if I want to print a 10, what is the array index for the value 10?
Three.
3, yes, 3. Now, but I don't want to type 3 because I know the array size is, that's the array size, right? Cost grades dot length, that's array size. But what's the largest index? Array size minus 1, right? Because when we declare an array of 100, the largest index is not 100. It's 100 minus 1, right? Always keep that in mind. So the largest index is the length minus 1. The length, the course grade length, dot length is 4, okay? Don't make a mistake about this. The course grades dot length is 4 because course grade is an array of 4. So now the largest index is the length, the array length minus 1. And then what's the condition? So I want to do the loop from 3, next one gonna be 2, next one gonna be 1, 1, next one gonna be 0, right?
You're
So
subtracting.
Okay, so I'm gonna say, as far as I is greater than or equal to 0, now what is this? You're gonna increment the I or decrement the I? Does it make sense? So I'm gonna do the for loop in the reverse way. So I start with the largest index, which is actually 3. And then I check whether I is still greater than equal to 0, because the smallest index is 0. So start from the largest index. Check whether index still greater than 0, greater than or equal to 0. And then after each loop, I'm going to decrement the index. So that's minus minus I. And then I'm going to print this. It's the same print statement. No difference. It's also coarse grade I, but the first I is 3. And then when I actually turn around and the next loop, because I actually decrement, right? So initially the coarse grade 3, and next one coarse grade of 2, next grade coarse grade 2. So let's actually execute it to see what it's. Okay.
You have to print a new line.
Okay, so I should insert right after I finish the printing the first line, then I just print a line. Still gave me. Oh, I should actually also print another. I thought I don't have to, but so this compiler is picky, you know. Yeah, we actually did it. So let's see what's the problem says. Oh, end each loop with a new line. So I just ignored that one. So for each end each of the, let me actually put a space here. So I printed this, array, and then end with a new line, and then print reversely and end with a new line. Okay. So any questions on this problem? So you need to actually familiar with the index and manipulate index with the loop. So typically, so people are going to ask you to actually print something, from index 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's the normal order. But what about people ask you to actually print reversely? So then you're going to start with the largest index. The largest index is array length. So whatever the array name, like my array dot length, -1. Okay, don't forget -1. That's the largest index. So if you have an array of 100 elements, the largest index is 100 minus 1. Array of 1,000 elements, the largest index is 999. Okay, so it's always one smaller than the size of the array. Okay, so and then when you do it reversely, then instead of I less than 100, 200, and then increment I, so you actually increment from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. But now you actually do the reverse. So you decrement. So the largest array size -1, and then I is still greater than or equal to 0, and then you decrement the I. So initially it's 100, 99, and the second one is 98, 97, 96, until you reach 0. Okay. Any questions? Okay, let's take a look at another example. Okay. So let's do this. The IDE 5.4.1. Let's actually look at the challenge activity 5.4. 5.4.2, 5.4.2. Okay, that's a challenging activity. Okay, what is this? 5.4.2. Let's take a look at this. Okay, 5.4.2. So finding values in array. Okay. So assign num matches with the number of elements in user values. User value is the array, okay, of that equals match value. User value has a non-vals elements. Okay, so user value is an array of, I don't know what's the number of elements, but that's defined by this. Okay, so example is like if the user value is array of this. Okay, so it's an array. So index 0 is 2, index 1 is 1. Okay, and the match value is 2. Then the number of match is 3. So basically, you basically search for the array elements for a certain value, like a 2 in this case. Now, if 2 actually appears 3 times, then you actually print out the number of matches. So you match 3 because you try to match 2, and then 2, 1, 3, 2, 3. There are 3 2s. Okay, so now, so let's see. In this case, match value is 2, and 2, 1, 2, 2. So that means you're going to return 3. Now match value 0 and the user values is 0, 0, 0. What is the return value? What is the number of num matches?
0.
No, it's 4, because 0 actually appears 4 times. It just actually check the value 2 with the array elements to see how many matches can you find. So in this case, 2 compare with each of the element, actually 2 actually shows up 3 times. So it's actually 3. Now this matches 0 with each of the element, and 0 matches all of them. So the 0 actually appears 4 times, right? So the return value should be 4. Now what about the last one? The match value is 10. So you try to match 10 with any array elements. What's the return value?
This one is 0, right?
This one's 0 because you cannot find 10 inside. Okay, now once you understand the problem, then let's just do the coding. Okay, so now the number of val is 4. So you are talking about an array of 4 elements. So the user values actually contains 4 elements, and then so the match val is imported. Okay, and then you actually import the user values. Okay, so let's do this. So number of match is negative 99. Okay, so but that's not the one. So we basically need to actually number of matches should be 0 initially. Okay, now for the for loop, I'm gonna say I equals 0, I less than, again I gotta use the user value dot always loop till you reach the length of the user value, and I plus plus I. So that's always the case. Now what are you gonna do? If the match value matches What are you going to do? So for each loop, I equals 0, the user value 0 compare with match value. If there's a match, what are you going to do? You increment the value, right? Make sense? And then you end the for loop. So the number non-match equals 0 initially. And then you do the loop for the user values. Now you check match value with each individual user value. If there's a match, then you increment the non-match, okay? So if there's no match, so every time when there's a match, then you go into the if loop, if statement, and increment the non-match. Does it make sense?
A little bit.
Little bit. Okay. Anyone else? Any questions on this? So let's just run it. Yeah, all tests passed. So the test with import 2. 2 is the match value, and the number of match is 3. Okay, so because the array is 2, 1, 2, 2, so 2 actually matches 3 times. Matches this one, matches this one, matches this one. Now test the number is 0, and this is the array is a 0, 0, 0, so you match all 4 of them. Okay, now this one doesn't match anything. Okay, so it's kind of confusing with each of the variable, because non-matches is basically number of matches. Okay, now user value is an array. So user value 0, 1, 2, 3, user value 1 with user value 2, user value is 3. Okay, match value is basically the value you want to match. Okay, so the first case is match value is 2, and so the match value compare with each individual user values. If there's a match, then you increment the number of match. Okay, so if you match all of them, so the if statement is going to be executed all of them. So if there's no match, the if statement will be completely skipped, because it's just check whether these match values matches any of these array value. Okay, whenever you find a match, then you actually do it. Okay, so that's basically how you execute the. Okay, let's see what's next. Okay, so next one, I think we want to find out the challenge activity 5.9.1. Okay, 5.9.1. Find a two-dimensional array max and minimum. Okay, so let's do this. Okay, so let's see. Two-dimensional array. Okay, so challenge activity, find the maximum value and the minimum values in miles tracker. Okay, so assign the maximum value to max miles, assign the minimum value to minimum miles. Okay, so let's first check this. Okay, so we have scanner, and we define number of rows, number of columns. So number of rows 2, number of columns 2. So that means it looks like a 2 by 2, two-dimensional. So number of rows, number of twos. So mile tracker is a two-dimensional array. And then you're gonna find out the maximum miles in the mile tracker and the minimum miles in the mile tracker. So basically, you have two indexes: the raw index and the column index. So number of rows and number of columns. So you basically could do that actually nested for loop. So you're gonna first for loop I, basically loop from the outside, the raw. Okay. So I is 0, I less than miles tracker dot length. Okay. So that dot length basically tells you what's the length of number of rows. Okay. Now then J is 0, J is less than miles tracker I. For each I, you actually, for each I, you're gonna check the length. Okay. So you basically import the value. Okay. Now, how can you check the let's see. You're gonna do the for loop again. Okay. So for I and the J, you're gonna do loop through both actual index. So I think you can actually initially assign mile. You can assign maximum. You can assign maximum to mile tracker. Okay. And the minimum also. Okay. So both the maximum and the minimum assign the mile tracker 0, 0. And then you can actually do the loop from mile tracker, row and a column. So then if mile tracker maximum is less than or equal to mile tracker I and J, what are you going to do? So if the current miles maximum mile is less than or equal to mile tracker, then what are you going to do? Override the mile maximum mile with the mile tracker I and J, right? Because if this mile maximum mile is less than mile tracker, then you assign mile tracker to maximum, because you always assign this. Okay. And then the other one is for the minimum. If the mix minimum is greater than or equal to, then you assign the minimum. So you just compare the actually, the maximum miles, minimum miles always going to store the smaller one. So you're going to do the loop and check a max mile with each of the element in the mile tracker. If the mile actually maximum is smaller than mile tracker, then assign mile tracker to the maximum. and if the min miles is actually greater than mile tracker, and then assign the mile tracker to the min. Okay, so then you can actually do so I'm gonna end up this for loop. So so then I print out. Let's run it. So we're running out of time, but array. Oh, okay. So last it should be. I should have closed the extra brace, not to open another one. Okay. Okay. So we're going to talk about this a little bit later. But so this is the code I actually implement. So you basically, so the mile tracker is two-dimensional array. It contains a whole bunch of elements. So you're going to do the loop for I and for J. And then you check each of the mile tracker value with the maximum miles. And initially you assign max mile with mile tracker 00. And then you do the loop. And if you find a bigger one, bigger than the currently stored in max miles, then assign the bigger one into the max miles. Now, if you find a smaller one for the min miles, if you find a smaller value, and then assign a smaller value to the min value. So eventually, after you complete the whole loop, then you basically, find the min mile and the max mile. Okay. So the loop is basically run for two actually dimensional array. The loop is basically run. So for two-dimensional array, the loop is basically run like this. So if you have a row and a column, so you basically row equals 0, and then you run column equals 0, 1, 2, 3, and then you check a row equals 1. So basically, when you run the loop, you basically run the loop like this. Okay, so so we're going to talk about this a little bit later. So because we're running out of time. So if you have any questions, please let me know. And also at the 12:30, I'm going to actually have an office hour, so you can come back and ask me. And also check the Xi books, so you can start to actually do the exercises over here. And I already actually assigned these the assignment to A. So okay.
Have a good weekend.
Okay, have a good weekend.
Have a good weekend.
Yeah.